I'll just give everybody a few minutes to file in. It looks like we're up to 50, 55, 65. I'll just wait like another minute or so as everyone's getting on. Okay, welcome everyone. I know people are still filing in, and I'm going to get started in just a minute because we have a lot of slides for you tonight. Welcome juniors and sophomores if you're joining, that's okay. And freshmen if you're joining, that's okay. All right. Thank you for joining us tonight. This is Preparing for College, and this is geared toward current juniors, the class of 2023. So we call this College Night for Juniors. My name is Winter Jones. I'm the District College and Career Readiness Counselor. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. Okay, if you're just joining us, we're going to go through some slides, and there is going to be, we have disabled the chat tonight, but there is a Google form that you're going to be able to enter questions that you may have on that Google form. And we'll be answering questions at the end of our presentation tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and go through my slides, and we also have linked in the questions that we got last year when we did this presentation. So you can also skim there and see if any of those questions that you may have were answered in that document last year. All right, tonight we're going to be taking a look at what our college is looking for, building the college list, applying to college and different types of applications, the SAT or the ACT and the updates on those, extracurricular activities, college application essays, financial aid and scholarships. We'll talk a little bit about NCAA for college athletes, and then we have some tips for students and parents and guardians. So you might be asking yourself, so I'm a junior now, and what if I have questions next fall? Don't worry, your counselors offer many types of help during college season. There'll be advisory presentations, access workshops. There's senior handouts and packets either emailed or given to you or available on your school's website. There's some evening presentations like this one and webinars, college application workshops. There's a great financial aid night. And then don't forget to use your school counselor's websites, and they're all linked in here. This slideshow has been shared out on the school's websites, but we will share it out again after the presentation. Now, don't forget colleges' websites. I think a lot of times students come in and ask counselors a question, and the counselor is going to direct you to the college's website. So you can search for any college on the internet, and you want to look for admissions, and you are an incoming freshman or an undergraduate. You may see those terms on a college's website. Look for undergraduate admissions requirements, courses needed in high school to apply. That can really vary by college. Are there any tests required, SAT, ACT, and are there any essays required? What kind of application do they use? And then campus tours are great. They might be still virtual now because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but some have gone back to being live. And then you can also check Zello to see if the college rep is coming to visit or if they submitted a virtual visit to the career centers, which is more likely still this year due to the COVID-19. Don't forget, you can always call an admissions office if you have questions. They're great about answering questions. And I just want to emphasize, students should call an admissions office, not parents or guardians. Parents, guardians, and counselors can help you plan what you want to say before you call, but students really should be doing the outreach to colleges. All right, so what are colleges looking for? We're going to talk about least selective colleges and most selective colleges and everything in between. So of course, a least selective college is going to be open enrollment, which we'll talk about in just a minute. And as selectivity increases, the application review process becomes a little bit more complex and nuanced. More things will be asked from you for those more selective colleges. So let's take a look at these different variations. So our public community colleges are open enrollment. There's 116 in California. There's 936 in the United States. And there are some four-year colleges, both public and private, with open enrollment. And we'll take a look at an example of one of those in just a minute. So the typical requirements for a least selective college with open enrollment is usually an application or a registration for which the fee can be waived, a high school transcript, which may be optional until you're attending. And then they usually have what's called a rolling application deadline, meaning you can apply either until they are full, or in the case of community colleges, until classes begin or classes become full. All right, so our local community college is Las Positas, and you can see here circled for eligibility, any person who is a high school graduate or equivalent thereof, or who is 18 years of age or older and who can profit from the instruction is eligible to apply for admission to Las Positas College. And we'll talk a lot about community colleges and transferring in just a few minutes. Here's a public four-year school. It's a Division II school for sports, Chadron State. Chadron State College shall admit as students those persons who have graduated from an accredited high school or who present evidence of the achievement of a high school equivalency certificate based on the GED examination. So there's a public state school with open admissions. All right, this chart is a few years old, and I looked for a new chart this year. They have not, the Department of Education has not updated it yet. But what I wanted to show you with this chart is of the four-year colleges, 2,146 not-for-profit colleges, you can see that only about 16 colleges admit less than 10% of the students who apply. 62 schools admit 10 to 25%, 276 schools admit 26 to 50%, and 1,314 colleges in the United States admit more than 50% of their applicants. So we don't want you to be nervous about a few select schools that are tough to get into once you apply, when there's over 1,000 schools that admit more than 50% of their applicants. All right, in this table, This is the percent of admitted first-time degree certificate-seeking undergraduate students who enrolled at post-secondary institutions in the fall. And the reason I wanted to show you this is because I wanted to show you that since 2014, the students enrolling in four-year colleges, applying to four-year colleges, has gone down a little bit. And college admissions are down, not colleges admitting you, but students applying to colleges. So this is a good time to sort of plan your college list and feel hopeful that you will be accepted to many of the schools that you apply to. All right, let's talk about holistic or comprehensive review. This is similar to what the private schools and the UCs are looking for in students. So typical admissions considerations, these are going to be schools that are getting a little bit more selective. They're going to have an application, a high school transcript. They're going to sometimes want teacher recommendations or counselor evaluations, essays, extracurricular activities, sometimes an interview. Students may be an athletic recruit. Proposed major or area of study might have to do with how easy or difficult it is to get into the school. Talents, recognition in a specific area, test scores if required, your experiences, demographics, legacy, demonstrated interest, and the college's relationship with the high school. And we'll talk a lot about demonstrated interest in just a minute. All right, the most selective colleges. Very selective colleges are colleges that accept very few applicants, about 5 to 25%. And think about schools like Stanford, UCLA, Harvard, UC Berkeley. Everything in the holistic review process is very magnified. Stellar academics and test scores are not unique, they're assumed and expected. So significant achievements and talents and unique experiences are even more important because many students are going to look the same on paper as far as what grades what classes they took and what grades they earned in those classes. So you really want to distinguish yourself from other students. But I want you to remember that the institutional priorities, in other words, the priorities of the colleges, those drive the admissions process for many of the colleges. So an institution might be growing or shrinking their incoming freshman class and or looking for certain characteristics for that class. In other words, not everything is in your control, and an admissions denial is not necessarily personal. So a college might be shrinking their incoming freshman class, which could make it harder to get in. They might be trying to fill their freshman class up with students of certain majors or certain demographics, and it's not personal to you that you don't get in. It's just that that college they're fulfilling their priorities first. Okay, so we're going to talk about demonstrated interest. It says about 50% of colleges will take into account whether and how much a student has shown them that they genuinely like their college when making an admissions decision. So this matters to the college because they're going to accept a whole group of students, and yield is that group of students that's actually going to attend their school. So while you show a college that you're interested, they know that if they offer you admissions, you're probably going to accept them back, and then that helps grow their yield. So we'll talk a little bit about that. All right. How do we build our college list? What makes a good college list? It should be manageable. So think about 8 to 12 schools that you want to apply to. That's about typical. You could have a few less, you could have a few more. Sometimes if you're doing 30 or more applications, that gets pretty stressful. And you want to ask yourself some questions like, would I attend some of these schools that I'm applying to? You want your list to be evenly distributed between your reach for your dreams schools, your target or your perfect fit schools, and your pretty sure thing schools. So you're going to use some statistics to estimate, and GPA is going to be one of them. If the college is accepting test scores, that's going to be one of them. And we're going to talk a lot about how test scores have changed in just a minute. The Ivy Leagues, the top UCs, Stanford, etc., those should be considered reach schools for all students. And that doesn't mean you won't get in. It's just not a guarantee. Make sure every school on your list meets your needs and priorities, and only apply to schools you have knowledge of and would be happy to attend. So maybe try having about 5 reasons per college of why you would go there. You're going to aim to finalize that list by early fall of your senior year. So think September or October of your senior year. You want your list to be finalized. And remember, as I mentioned earlier, there are over 2,000 four-year colleges in the United States, not just 10 colleges. Now, as you're thinking about a college that's going to be a good fit for you, you want to make sure it has the academic programs you're looking for. Think about the weather. I know that sounds silly, but think about the weather and the time of year that you're going to be on that campus. If you do not like the snow, you may not want to go to college in Minnesota, for example. Think about rural, big city, and suburban. What kind of environment are you used to being in and like to be in? Religious affiliation, school size, social and recreational activities, the price. Is it liberal or conservative? Do they have sports? Is it the right distance from home? Either maybe you want it to be a little further from home, or maybe you want it to be a little closer from home. Campus culture, learning style, academic support, and then can you get in? Do you meet those GPA and extracurricular statistics that are average for that college admissions? All right, we talk about the 5 Ps: person, program, people, place, and price. So again, does your GPA, courses taken, extracurriculars, and test scores, if needed, fit that college's profile? And then think about, is it a reach? Is it a perfect fit? Or is it a sure thing? What's the learning style of the college? Will you be successful there and enjoy it? In other words, is it very, very competitive? Does that motivate you, or does that stress you out? Is it very collaborative? Do you like that, or do you dislike that? Maybe you're more of an independent worker. Does the college have your major of interest, and can you change your major? This is really important. You want to make sure, of course, that the college has your major, but then what if you get in there and you don't like it? Can you change it? And do they have internship and research opportunities? So for example, Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, they make it pretty hard to change your major. So that may not be a school to apply to if you're not sure what you want to major in. Most UCs don't offer nursing, only UCLA and Irvine. So if you want to go into nursing and you have 9 UCs on your application list, that may not be correct. Not all have the engineering 3-2 programs. That's a dual degree program where you can earn a BA and a BS from a liberal arts college and a Bachelor of Science in Engineering from a partnering engineering school. So there's a website here that you can check to look for those types of schools if that sounds interesting to you. And then what is the quality and quantity of courses in your major, and who are the professors? Sometimes you can do research on the professors and see where they went to school and compare programs that way. Is the environment competitive, collaborative, small, medium, or large? Are there opportunities to make connections with others of similar passions and interests? Are there fraternities and sororities, if that's something that interests you? And then, as I mentioned before, what's the weather during the time of year you will be on campus? Can you engage in your hobbies there? And is it the right distance from home? And is the school affordable? And would you go there if you got in? Okay, how do I find the schools that are a good fit? Zello is our new tool this year, and they have what's called the Matchmaker Survey. And then under the Explore Options tab in Zello, you can investigate careers, colleges, and majors. And in Zello also, you can view the college rep videos. Those are linked in there by your fabulous Career Center people. And you can watch their videos in there. They're still all virtual this year. You can visit colleges. And if they're local, you can go there and visit them. If they're far away, you might do a virtual tour on their website. And then attend college fairs, and we'll have some links to those in a little bit here. Register for college tours, either online or in person. And then remember, don't forget to go directly to the college's website. That would actually be my #1 recommendation. If you have a particular school in mind, go to their website and start surfing around. Here's some helpful books and websites. There's the Fisk Guide to Colleges. There's a lot of people swear by a book called Colleges That Change Lives. And then you have your Ruggs recommendation. And there's also a book called The College Finder. For websites, we have here CSU and UC. Big Future is College Board's website that allows you to do some career and college searching. And then WUI, we're going to talk about in just a minute. That's the Western Undergraduate Exchange, and that will come up in our financial aid section tonight. College fairs, some are virtual, some are in person. There's some national fairs here, and some of those dates are by major. I put some of them for you here. February 8th coming up is Performing and Visual Arts College Fair. February 15th is All Majors College Fair. And if you go to that website that's linked there, there's a list of the attending colleges. And then February 24th is a STEM college fair. So that link will give you all the details about those. Okay, just a quick tip for parents and guardians. The student should be directing the college search and application process. Help your students stay organized, but don't do everything for them. Remember, they are soon off to college and need to learn these skills. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that this evening as well. It's important that the student has a say in what schools make it to the list. Remember that the student has to spend the next 4 years at the college. Be realistic, don't just focus on prestige, and visit schools even if it's virtually this year. All right, let's talk about applying to college, the requirements, the application dates, and some financial aid. All right, I know everybody's seen this before. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. There's 2 slides here that are in the middle column. You have your Pleasanton Unified graduation requirements. And then on the far column, you have your UC-CSU requirements. And we're a California public high school, so the UCs are the system that dictates which of our classes are college prep. And so when you're comparing your graduation requirements to your college entrance requirements, if you're looking at a UC track, you're going to be pretty eligible for any college in the country. So we'll just go through really quickly and think about your transcripts, since you're going to be seniors, maybe some of you next year. For college admission, you want 2 years of history, usually 1 year of US and 1 year of world, 4 years of English, 3 levels of math. Think of math by levels: algebra, geometry, and algebra 2, or equivalent or above algebra 2. Math 2 through 4 will get you through algebra 2 as well. And the UC recommends that 4th level of math, which would be the pre-calculus or the AP statistics. So think of those by levels. And if you did algebra and or geometry in middle school, that does count. You have completed them for college. Science, 1 year; physical, 1 year; life. And then think of world language also by levels. So if you did Spanish 1A and 1B, or French 1A and 1B in middle school, you may have come into high school on your 2nd level. And that is the level that you need for college admission. So if you go on to level 3, you're in the UC recommended level. Those middle school world language courses also do count. And then you have your 1 year of your visual and performing art. So that's in addition to the 2 levels of the world language. Remember, for graduation, it's either or. And then you also now can have that 1 year of career technical education class, CTE. That's for graduation. And then 1 year college prep elective for the UCs. So that'll be, you'll be able to put a lot of things in that category, which your counselors will help you with next year. All right, so right now you're getting ready to pick your senior classes, or maybe you already did it. I know the window opened on Tuesday. So think about your goals. What is the level of selectivity of the colleges you're aiming for? What is your ability? Are you able to maintain passing grades in the classes you picked? Course loads and grades are both important, so we have to balance those 2 things. Only challenge yourself in areas of ability, interest, and skill. And there's no magic number of APs. So if you load yourself up with 4 or 5 or 6 APs, but grades suffer because it's too much work. That is not what colleges are looking for. Are you matching level of rigor from your previous 3 years? So you don't want to have a big dip in rigor, and you also don't want to have a huge leap in rigor. That's going to cause those grades to be lower. Put your class selection in context with your life, 24 hours in a day, that's it. And showing that you are well-rounded or have specific interests are both good. So ask yourself, which type of person am I? Do I have very specific interests and I went really far in one area? Or am I more well-rounded and I dabbled in lots of different things? Both of those are good. Colleges know that high school is a time to explore your interests and find things that you don't like and find things that you do like. All right. Will you have time to sleep? We're still thinking about your senior schedule here. Build and or keep friendships or relationships, do outside activities, pursue passions. Will you be overwhelmed with homework, studying, tests, and pace? Ask yourself, if I took one less rigorous course, would my grades be better overall? Or will one more challenging course make a difference in the big picture? So you really just want to show colleges that you are maintaining and you're balancing your life with your academics, because they don't want students to get to their campus and overload themselves and get burned out. Okay, so on your transcript, colleges are looking really for 5 academic courses for 4 years. So they're going to calculate your GPA in a lot of different ways. They will recalculate the GPA, after first and second semester of senior year. And that is even after you have been admitted to the school. So remember, senior grades, even though you don't have them when you apply, they do count. A lot of schools are going to ask for mid-years and see your first semester grades. And then they're going to see final transcript, of course, after you've been admitted. So you want to have a balanced load on there. And then think about your trends. Are you continuing to do better? Are you continually overloading and doing worse? Are there any little blips on your transcript, and did you explain them? So that would be like maybe a semester where grades slipped because something challenging was happening in your life. And I have a link here to a Q&A that we put together during the shelter in place. And colleges now are really saying to avoid writing too much about COVID because everybody experienced it. And if you think you might have a COVID experience that was very unique from others, and you do want to write about it, click on that link there and when you get your slideshow, and that'll kind of talk you through what might be a unique situation that you could write about COVID if you really feel like you need to. Are you taking classes that show what you may be interested in? So as I just said earlier, colleges know that high school was made to explore. So it's okay to try things out, but show colleges that you're learning, even if it's from trial and error. So if you overloaded yourself one semester and grades slipped a little bit, but then the next year you got yourself back balanced where you could manage your courses, colleges will see that on your transcript, and you can explain that to them on a lot of the college applications that ask for additional comments. Quick reminder about out-of-district courses. These would be classes that you maybe took at a community college, or maybe you took online, that you may or may not have added to your Pleasanton Unified transcript. So each school where a course was taken will need to be added to your college applications as a separate school attended. So for example, if a student took a class at Las Positas, they'll be adding Las Positas to their college application as a school attended with the course that they took. So college application time this coming fall for most of you, it's very busy and it can be stressful. So we want you to have a little bit of information about this up front. Those out-of-district courses can add a little extra step to the process. So when the colleges ask for official transcripts, you will order transcripts from all the schools you attended in addition to your PUSD transcript to be sent to the colleges. So I know now you guys request transcripts through Parchment. So you won't be sending your transcripts from outside schools using your portal for your PUSD parchment. So you don't want an outside transcript to take the place of your PUSD transcript in parchment if you're doing some common applications next year, which we'll talk about in just a minute. And having that out of district course on your Pleasanton transcript does not excuse that step. So whether or not the out of district course is on your PUSD transcript, you will still be adding that school as another school attended and requesting an official transcript be sent from that school. It's not official from us because it's not our course. So colleges require that you disclose everything you take regardless of whether or not you add it to our transcript. And remember that geometry is required by the UCs and nothing validates it. So geometry taken before 7th grade doesn't count and would have to be retaken. And if you took geometry outside, of course, you will show that to the colleges. All grades are permanent and you have to report everything you take on college applications. You don't want to hide any grades. We have experiences ourselves where students have been dismissed from college for not revealing out of district courses. So there's a link here to a slideshow that talks about out of district courses and your GPA with a little bit more information. All right, let's talk about different types of colleges and their applications. So we started to talk about community college at the beginning, and I want to talk about when you might consider community college as your first choice and not a backup plan. So you may not know exactly what you want to study, and you don't want to end up at a four-year college that does not offer your future major of choice. So that would be one reason maybe to start at community college. Now remember, in most colleges, the first 2 years, everyone is doing their general education. That's at a four-year or at a community college. All college students are doing their general education. When students transfer from community college to a four-year, they transfer as juniors with their general education done. So that's why many selective colleges accept over 90% of transfer students, and some with guarantees. You may have heard of TAG, the transfer agreement guarantee. Four-year colleges love transfer students because they're not going to take up space in those crowded general ed classes. They're going to be ready to start on their major classes, and they're 2 years in. So they only have 2 years left usually before they get their degree. So students may not be ready to leave home just yet. That could be financially or emotionally. And since no application is required, only registration, community colleges can also be part of a backup plan. There's no SAT or ACT required, not even when you transfer. There's no required high school coursework or grades. They might be used for placement, but you just need to be a high school graduate, and you can register at one of those nearly 200 community colleges in the country. There's no essays or personal statements. You don't need any letters of recommendation. So if you're thinking about that as a first plan or a backup plan, registration is usually November through March of the senior year. And remember, we have, I think I said 116 community colleges in California. Our local ones are Las Positas, Ohlone, and DVC, but a lot of students travel to Cuesta in San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara City in Santa Barbara, or San Diego City or Grossmont in San Diego. But remember, that changes your financial savings a little bit because then you're living away from home. But a lot of students will move there so they can be close to maybe one of the colleges that they want to transfer into, like Cal Poly, UC Santa Barbara, UC San Diego, or San Diego State. Tuition cost is by unit, and it's about $1,500. Remember, you just need to be a high school graduate or 18 to enroll. Students can earn certificates, AA or AS degrees, Associates of Arts or Associates of Science degrees, or they can transfer to a four-year institution, some with guarantees. And you'll work with your transfer counselor at the community college once you're there to learn how to be on track for a TAG, a transfer agreement guarantee. And there they are. Lots of them. Now, our California state universities, there's 23 campuses. There's a link there to their application. Their window for submission is usually October 1st through November 30th, but due to COVID, a lot of application deadlines have been extended. In a normal year, we recommend finishing those applications before Thanksgiving break in case you have any questions. And their total cost is about $20,000 to $28,000 per year with room and board. Tuition's about $5,000 to $6,000. They don't require any essays or letter of recommendation, but they do have a new supplemental evaluation. And there's a link here. It's specific to each campus. So each campus is a little bit different. There's a link there to that. And that's because so far they have not gone back to looking at an SAT or an ACT score. So now they're asking for some extracurricular information to flesh out your application. So a Cal State GPA is 10th and 11th grade, those A to G or college prep courses only. And their minimum GPA is a 2.5. A non-California resident has to have a 3.0. So California residents have a little bit of an advantage. And if you have a 2.0 to a 2.49, you can still be considered, excuse me, and they'll be looking at those supplemental factors linked above. So if you have a 2.0 to a 2.49 at the end of this year, junior year, don't be discouraged. You still may be able to do a Cal State application. And there are the Cal States. All right, our UCs have one application for 9 campuses. Their application opens August 1st for viewing and filling out, but you can't submit until November 1st. And then you can submit from November 1st to November 30th. And they have 4 essays, they call them personal insight questions or PIQs. And they're 350 words each for a total of 1,400 words. So you will write 4 little mini essays for them. Their total cost is about $30,000 to $36,000 with tuition being $12,600. They use the same GPA that the Cal States use, 10th and 11th grade, college prep courses only, and their minimum GPA for admission is a 3.0. And we have a link here so you can see how their applications are holistically reviewed. In other words, what extracurriculars are they looking for? So there was a 14-point review and it's now a 13-point review because they do not look at SAT or ACT scores any longer. All right. And there they are. Now a CSU and a UC GPA calculation, neither system wants you to send official transcripts when you apply. So you are going to self-report your grades, but you'll want to get a copy of your transcript and use that to report your grades so that you don't make a mistake. They're going to calculate your GPA using 10th and 11th grade only. They're going to exclude, excuse me, they're going to exclude pluses and minuses. CR or NC earned during the pandemic are not calculated in the GPA. They're going to exclude PE and any classes without a P in the title. They only award extra points for certain honors and all AP classes. So you can check the UC A to G list or the program guide to see which courses are weighted. They're going to cap the extra points at 8 semesters. Or 4-year-long classes taken in 10th and 11th grade. So we'll talk a little bit about that when we look at the GPA calculation, and we'll talk about why they have that cap. So here's your grade points and their value, and then weighted grade points and their value. And a D, of course, is not weighted in an AP class. Ds are not considered passing for college. They're passing for graduation. You earn 5 credits, but they're not passing for college. Okay, so let's take a look at a transcript here. We've crossed out the 9th grade year. Now that you're going to report your classes from 9th grade, because remember you need those 4 years of English, but you're not going to use the 9th grade year in the GPA calculation. And let me just preface this by saying the Cal States and the UCs, they're going to calculate your GPA for you, but a lot of students need to calculate GPA because they want to see if they're eligible to apply before they spend that money on the applications. So you're going to take all your classes that have the P after for college prep, and you're going to assign that point value to your grades. And then an easy way to do it is to go onto the CSU's GPA calculator. There's no more eligibility index because there's no SAT or ACT score, and that was part of the computation. So you're going to enter in your number of A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's, just the number of them. And then in the honors box there, you're just going to put, if you have 4 or more weighted classes, you're just going to put 8 semesters of weight. You can't put more than 8 in there. I've tried to put 9 or 10 in there, and it won't let you go through. So you can only put 8. And if you only took, say, 3 weighted courses, you would put 6. 2 weighted courses, you'd put 4, etc. And then that'll tell you what your UC or CSU GPA is. Now, on your actual transcript, as of this semester, you're going to see 2 GPAs listed there. There's the overall, and that is unweighted. That includes all courses completed so far. And remember, CR and NC are not calculated in the GPA. And remember, only semester grades go on the official transcript. So you have usually 2 grades per class per year. Some colleges are going to ask you for an unweighted GPA, and the overall is the GPA that you would use on your transcript. Then you'll see overall weighted. So if you took any weighted honors or AP classes, that GPA might be a little bit higher. And if you didn't take any weighted classes like honors pre-calculus or AP, your overall and your overall weighted should be identical. Now, if you look at charts online that show you average GPAs for college admittance, remember that that is usually all students who applied, not all students who end up attending. So some students with really high GPAs may have applied to any school or say a UC with no intention of going there, and that is inflating the average GPA of the admitted students. So remember, when you see those averages, you know students got in with GPAs above that and below that as well. So don't be alarmed by those charts when you look at what was the average GPA admitted to UC Berkeley and things like that. All right, private and out-of-state colleges. I mentioned earlier, there's 2,000 public schools and 4,000 of total institutions in the United States. So we have 1,600 sort of like state colleges, 1,700 private colleges. Those are regular 4-year, not-for-profit. And then there's about 985 for-profit private institutions. So think of things like the Academy of Art in San Francisco, DeVry, the University of Phoenix. Some of those can go out of business, like WildTech, because they are private for-profit institutions. They tend to cost a bit more, but they sometimes offer more financial aid, and they sometimes promise that a student will graduate in 4 years. So that could be a financial savings if you're thinking about a private school. Applications and requirements vary. They usually use the Common App that's used by more than 800 institutions, and the Common App opens on August 1st of the senior year. So check colleges' websites for whether or not they require SAT or ACT. A growing number are test optional, which we'll talk about in just a minute. If they require any essays that you want to start thinking about, and if they require any letters of recommendation that you might want to think about who you're going to ask. All right, and there's the private colleges by area. And then I wanted to show you some private school admissions statistics because I know you've heard of some of these schools, and I want to show you how many students who applied were admitted. So you've probably heard of the University of San Diego. That's different than UC San Diego, which is public, and San Diego State, which is also public. This is a private school in San Diego that's popular. They call it USD. 53% of students who applied there were admitted. Santa Clara University, not too far away from here, 54% of students who applied were admitted. USF, you've probably heard of, 65% of students who applied were admitted. St. Mary's is not too far away, 82% admit rate. USC, 16%, they're a little more selective. Pepperdine, 40%. And UOP, not too far away from here as well, 65% of the students who applied to UOP were admitted. All right, so I want to emphasize that there are so many great colleges. I want you to think broadly, think outside the box. For example, in the top 20 engineering schools in the country, there's the University of Illinois with a 66% acceptance rate. In the top 20 business schools in the country, there's Georgia University with a 53% acceptance rate. Top 3 veterinary schools, Colorado State with an acceptance rate of 81%. I know we have our local veterinary school, UC Davis, which would be after your bachelor's degree, and they're pretty challenging to get into. So you might want to look at Colorado State. In the top 5 dental schools, Ohio State with an acceptance rate of 49%. And in the top 10 film schools, Loyola Marymount in Southern California with an acceptance rate of 51%. How does the school counselor get to know me? And do I need to hire a private college counselor? Well, it's my favorite question. All right. Despite the number of students assigned to each counselor, we do remember the small interactions, professional, polite emails or personal interactions. Respond to emails if we email you or if we call you up to the counseling office. Self-advocacy, so coming up when you need help. And then reaction to setbacks. You'd be surprised we get asked that question when we're completing common applications and other private school applications for students. How does the student react to setbacks, both large and small? And what are students' relationships with teachers, peers, and the school community? So a private college counselor can't replace the school counselor. Only the school counselor can complete the counselor portions of the college application, such as the common application. And that's often called your secondary school report, which includes your transcript and your school profile. And then your school counselor also does what's called a counselor evaluation. So even if students have one or more teachers or other recommenders, school counselors still have 2 parts of the Common App and other applications like Coalition, Send EDU, or schools that still only use their own applications like MIT and Georgetown. All right, the college application experience. A lot of times, people want to complete college applications for students, or they want to hire someone to complete college applications for students. So I want to talk about the benefits of having the student complete their own college application. This might be the first of many forms very similar to this that a student will fill out in their lifetime. And it is high stakes, so definitely ask for someone to check your application before you submit, or ask for help if you're not sure about something. But we have found that when students do not complete their own application, serious mistakes have been made, like incorrect listing of social security numbers by private counselors, or adults helping so much that they accidentally submit the college app in their own name instead of the students. I know that sounds funny and I can't see anybody's faces, so I hope you're laughing, but that actually has happened. I would say probably at least once a year, somebody accidentally submits an application for a student using their own name instead of the student's name. All right, let's talk about some different kinds of applications. And I wanted to show you some comparisons of regular decision, rolling, early action, early decision, and restrictive early action. So we'll be talking a little bit about these. Regular decision is students submitting an application by a specific date. Rolling is when you can submit an application throughout the cycle and usually until the school is full. Early action is when you apply early and you receive a decision in advance of their regular response date. And those 3 types are called non-binding. So that means you can apply that way and you haven't signed a contract to abide by anything. Now, early decision, ED, is binding. And so that means that you're making a commitment that that's your first choice. And if you are admitted, you will definitely enroll. So you want to make sure that you only do that to one school and that that is the school you would go to if you got in. And then we have restrictive early action, which we'll talk about a little bit more in just a minute. It's non-binding, but we'll talk about that in just a minute. So let's look at regular decision enrolling. Those deadlines fall anywhere between usually January and March, with the majority of them in January and February. And decisions are generally given in March and April. It's a normal application. It's non-binding. So if you get an offer from another school, you're not bound to one. And then rolling admissions is the deadline is usually when they're full. Depending on when you apply, you could be notified of a decision within 2 days to 2 months after you submit your application. So if you apply and you are eligible, you might be offered admission there within 2 days. And they're sort of a first come, first serve. So you want to apply early. Now, early action and restrictive early action. Early action is non-binding. You apply early, you hear from the school early. Not all schools have this option. You can apply to any number of schools early, and you can still compare financial aid packages. This is kind of for students who are not waiting for senior grades to help their GPA, and maybe they're done taking the SAT and SAT if that score is still needed. And applying early action does show interest to the school. So that's that demonstrated interest we were talking about. Restrictive early action is like early action, but you're restricted to applying early to just that one school. So that's generally a private school thing. For example, this little clip here is from Stanford. Restrictive early action is a non-binding early application option for students who have completed a thorough college search and are confident Stanford is their first choice. Early decision 1 and 2, those are binding, meaning that if you get accepted, you are promising to retract all applications to other schools and attend that school. So, of course, you can only apply early decision to one school at a time. Financial aid becomes a little bit difficult to negotiate. So you're basically waiving your right to compare financial aid packages. So really consider if this is your first choice school and you can afford it without financial aid. So most schools accept a higher percentage of students from this pool, but that statistic is a little bit skewed because it's usually a stronger than average pool of candidates applying early decision 1 and 2. It does show interest, and some schools offer 2 early decision options like NYU. Okay, SAT and ACT, should I take it? Let's talk about this. All right. So there was some changes for COVID, and then there were some permanent changes. So about 60% of the colleges in the United States are test blind or test optional right now. At first, when the pandemic first hit, this was due to the lack of open test centers, but it's now caused a complete reconsideration of the validity and worth of the tests. So let's talk about test blind means scores will not be considered even if you have them. The UCs were under a court order last year to be test blind, and they say now that they will not return to this test requirement. Test optional means that you can submit scores if you have them and want them to be considered. So colleges say that choosing not to submit scores will not affect an admissions decision. So a lot of students have asked me, but if they're test optional and I don't submit, won't I be at a disadvantage from someone who does submit? Colleges say that you will not. They are test optional. You can submit if you want, and you could not submit if you want. So there's a website called Fair Test, and I've linked it here. It's fairtest.org. And you can check any school in the country to see if they are requiring the SAT or the ACT right now. And remember that 60% in the country right now are not requiring these tests. College Board has done away with the optional essay portion of the SAT, and they have also done away with the subject tests. You can still use AP exam scores to show mastery of a subject because there's no more subject tests. All right, and you might have just heard last week on the news, it was very exciting. In the United States, starting with the PSAT in October of 2023 and the SAT in March of 2024, the test is going digital. Now, while this does not affect a current junior, this might affect a younger sibling or friend, or if we have some younger students on the call. You'll still test at a test center or a school site, but the test is digital. And it's going from over 3 hours in length to about 2 hours in length, and a calculator may be used on all the math sections now. So you might have heard that it's starting in 2023 for SAT. That's the international start date. It's actually not starting for the United States until SAT in March of 2024. But PSAT in October of 2023 will be the new format. All right. Okay, so just to address that question I mentioned earlier, so pre-pandemic testing policy is the top chart there. SAT, ACT required by about 64% of colleges, 34% were test optional. And then the current testing breakdown after the pandemic is only 2.9% of schools required the SAT or ACT. 41% went test optional for a one-year trial, and 9% went test optional for a multi-year trial. And 155 schools, or 37%, went permanently test optional, and 35 schools are test free. So you can see how this is really shifting here. All right, what's the timeline if I want or need to take the test? For SAT, there's a website linked there. The tests coming up for juniors are March 12th, May 7th, and June 4th. And let's see here. Oh, I'm sorry, that should say June 5th, and June 4th is the day, no, I'm sorry, June 4th is the day after school gets out. So that's the correct date, June 4th. ACT is April 2nd, June 11th, and July 16th. And there's the deadlines there for you. Juniors usually take it for the first time this spring if they're going to take it, and then that gives you the fall of your senior year to retake if you'd like. All colleges except the August and October SAT and the September and October ACT, but some competitive schools want testing done by October of the senior year. Most colleges allow through December of the senior year and even later now due to COVID, knowing that the scores will come after you've done your college applications. That is okay. Try not to take the test more than 2 times, 3 at the most. And you can't take both to compare if you feel like you need them. Okay, some things to keep in mind. They were never and are still not required for community college, not even when you transfer. Colleges accept either test. Super scoring is something that some colleges do, not all, where they take your highest scores from different test sittings and put them together to make an overall high score for you. So you can find out on a college's website if they even require the test, if they're doing that. And then score choice is a feature created by College Board that allows students the option to choose certain SAT scores to send to colleges for an additional fee. Colleges don't like this. They want to see all of your scores so they can put together the best package for you, like maybe if they super score. So colleges have the option to not allow score choice submission, and many colleges will not accept your scores if you use it, and that can cause a delay. So don't be tricked into College Board score choice, which costs money and irritates colleges. Okay, extracurricular activities. Remember, just like the number of APs you take, there's no magic formula or checklist. You should participate in activities that you enjoy and can be involved with throughout high school. Sustained involvement is valued when you find what you like. You don't need to do research, have an internship, or do volunteer work in another country to get admitted to college. And you shouldn't do activities just because they look good on college applications. Colleges know when students are doing that. So you just want to be yourself and explore and find what you like. Never fabricate a hardship for a college application, and be engaged, motivated students who are pursuing their interests. All right, let's talk about essays. We're coming near the end now. I'm sorry, this is a long presentation. Hang in there. So why do colleges ask for essays? No matter what the question or the prompt is, what they're really asking is, who are you? How did you arrive at who you are? What are you planning on doing at our college with that knowledge or passion or outlook? They want to hear your voice and learn what's important to you. They're looking for fit. Will you fit in with them? Will they fit in with you? It's a form of a college interview when they can't conduct one. How does the essay benefit you? It personalizes your application, distinguishes you from peers who may look similar on paper, tells your personal story, explains something about you that isn't already apparent in your application, or explains something on your transcript, and it shares something special about you, and it demonstrates that you can express yourself effectively and persuasively in writing. Now, private school essays and UC PIQs that we talked about are asking for very different styles of writing. UC essays must be clear and to the point. Common App essays can often be a little more creative, or they have you responding to a creative prompt, quote, or situation. But this is the only part of the application that allows your voice to be heard. So it will differentiate applicants who have similar grades and test scores if test scores are required. Focus on you, not an event, accomplishment, or another person. The bulk of the essay should focus on you and your reflection of a situation, person, or activity. So be careful about writing about another person. I know that that's tricky. It's hard to write about ourselves, but you really want to think about that and have your essay proofread by a couple people so that you can get some feedback. Use the opportunity to introduce something new that isn't already part of the application, and always stick to the prompt. Supplemental essays sometimes say optional, but if you have an interest in that school, do it. Because remember, we're trying to think of ways to show interest in the colleges so that they know if they accept you, you'll accept them. So they're just as important as the main essays. So edit, be thoughtful, put effort in. They show your interest. They're looking for fit for their school. And they might ask you a why question. They're seeking out the student's motivation and thoughtfulness. Good answers show that you're excited about the school and have done your research. All right, financial aid. All right, so we have federal or need-based aid, which is based on family income and estimated family contribution. We have institutional or aid, usually directly from the university. And this is where a lot of aid will come from, directly from the school. That could be needs-based, merit-based, or athletic-based. And the last two there are sometimes not available. And then, of course, private federal aid. That can be given for any reason. That usually has an application and a deadline. Okay. So everybody's going to want to do the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. They have, it's linked to an IRS retrieval tool now. So they use, they call it the prior year's taxes. So it's a little more clear than it used to be. It's still a tough application, but it's a little more clear than it used to be. And it's a little easier to do because it doesn't require you to rush and do your taxes ahead of time. It's going to use the prior year's taxes. So the comprehensive high schools here in Pleasanton offer financial aid night every single year. It's a great night. We have a speaker who comes from college to answer questions and give tips on filling out the FAFSA. So everybody's going to want to do that. Then the Cal Grant is linked to the FAFSA. Both schools, Amador and Foothill, submit the Cal Grant GPA electronically. So every student who submits the FAFSA will have their Cal Grant submitted, and that's state money that you can use if you qualify and you stay in California for college. Now you might see something called the CSS profile. Some private schools require this College Board created financial aid application. So watch for deadlines. This is another College Board form that you would fill out. It costs money. It's about $25 for the first school and $16 for the additional school. So that's kind of a bummer. And then don't forget to watch the scholarship list maintained in Zello. It's put together by your Career Center staff, and they have a link in Zello to the scholarship lists. And another really trustworthy scholarship website is called fastweb.com. So that's another place to look, but definitely check the list in Zello because those can be more local, maybe for Pleasanton students only, etc. Okay, FAFSA opens October 1st and has a priority deadline of March 2nd. Money is sometimes on a first come, first served basis, so fill out the form as soon as possible. A parent or guardian will likely need to fill it out with you because it has to do with taxes. And there's lots of community colleges and local colleges that have nights to help families fill out the form. And there's a local event called Cash College that is sometimes advertised. So the FAFSA needs to be filled out for every type of aid, needs-based, merit-based, scholarship, and athletic. And everyone should fill it out, even if you think you won't qualify, even if you think your grades aren't that good, and even if you don't have taxes done. Everybody should fill out the FAFSA. Now, I said we would talk about WUI. This is the Western Undergraduate Exchange. And this is a group of states here on the West Coast that have gotten together, and they have decided to offer reduced tuition to students within those states. So it's not automatically awarded to all eligible candidates. Many institutions limit the number of new WUI awards each year. So some colleges, when you apply, they'll automatically put you in if you make the deadline. And then other schools have a limited number and they'll have you do an application. But here's a list of all the participating states. So Arizona, us, of course, Colorado, Nevada, Utah. So in other words, some of these schools you can, like if you apply to a school in Oregon or Washington or Colorado, you may be able to get in-state tuition out of state. All right, NCAA, this is for future college student athletes. And you likely, if you're a junior, you have already registered. If you haven't, here's a link to the Eligibility Center. You're going to want to request a transcript to be submitted by your high school through Parchment. And you'll send SAT or ACT scores if needed using the code 9999. If you want to make sure you're eligible both athletically and academically, I have a link here to the Division I and Division II school worksheets. So you can make sure you're taking the right courses. And then here's a link to NCAA's official site. So this is for student athletes who want to play their sport in college. Okay, and just a quick timeline overview. So right now we're in the spring of your junior year. If you're a junior, you're going to select your courses by February 15th. Start researching some colleges, take SAT and ACT if you need to, visit the colleges, virtually or in person, and check out that scholarship list in Zello. Come on into the Career Center at your school if you're having trouble finding that scholarship list. And summer after this year, interests, start to narrow down your college list and maybe start thinking about personal statements and essays if you're going to apply to some schools that require them. You can look at the UC's prompts on their website anytime. They're always posted. In the fall, you're going to finalize that list. You're going to start your application, attend the events offered by your counselors for help, submit your UC and CSU and your early applications in around November, October, November, attend your financial aid night and do your FAFSA. And then December, January, you'll finish submitting applications, apply for scholarships, take a deep breath. And then in the spring, you'll get your admissions decisions. May 1st is called the SIR, the student intent to register. That's the deadline to choose your college. And then you will graduate and request your final transcript be sent to the college that you selected. All right, and just remember there's multiple perfect pathways for everyone at every academic level. Not every great college has super competitive admissions ratings. Remember those percentages I showed you. GPA is not everything. Test scores are hardly anything anymore. Fit is more important than prestige when picking the right school for you. And the best way to be a great applicant for college is to have balance in your high school courses and in your life. Balance is achieved by doing your best to enjoy life, grow academically, get rest, build relationships, and pursue passions. And your school counselors are here to help you. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and go to some questions. Okay. So let's see here. Looks like we have a question asking, is there any way to know which colleges AVHS and FHS students are admitted to in prior years? Unfortunately, we don't have that data right now. That was a feature in Naviance, but we have moved away from Naviance to Zello, so we don't have that data at this time. How should students look for scholarships? Are there certain recommended websites? Yes, you want to go to Zello, and there's a link to a scholarship spreadsheet that's updated every Friday in there. Most of them are for seniors, but you can start watching them and see if there are any for juniors now, but you can also see they do tend to be the same ones that come up each year. So you can kind of watch for ones that you might want to next year when you are a senior. And then of course, the website I mentioned that I find pretty trustworthy is fastweb.com. And that's on the slideshow. All right, and someone asked, I finished Algebra 2 my sophomore year. Did I finish my 3-level math requirement for UCs? Yes, if you did Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2, you have finished through the 3rd level of math. The 4th level is recommended for UCs, which is pre-calc, but not required. Okay, let's see here. The FAQ form says to not mention activities that slowed down or stopped in high school. Does this still apply if the activity was stopped because of the pandemic but is resumed later? I would say if you're doing a college application that has a spot for additional comments, which would be like the UC applications, you could certainly mention that. Okay, so now I'm realizing what this person is asking is if you were doing an activity, say through middle school, and then you stopped it in high school. We said don't mention that because they don't really care too much about what was going on in middle school unless it was sustained. But if the activity has been resumed, then definitely, yes, I think if you're doing that activity during high school now, you could certainly mention it on a college application. Okay. Colleges publish GPA range for freshman admissions. Is this GPA the high school GPA or unweighted GPA, or it varies college to college? It will vary. Each college and different college systems have different ways of calculating GPA. So when they publish their average range, they're usually publishing it by the way that they have calculated it. So some schools calculate unweighted. Some schools have a cap on the number of weighted, like the UCs and Cal States. Okay, let's see. Good question. Can you take 2 ROP classes, off-campus classes during senior year? It depends on how many periods those ROP classes are. So if they were 1 period classes and you didn't have to take a period off to travel, you might be able to take 2. The general rule is that 4 of your classes sort of belong to your school site, and then 2 of your periods can be off-site. So it does depend on the number of periods that the ROP class takes up. UCs do not factor in pluses and minuses. They do not account, and A- is the same as an A+. Good question. What type of teacher should I ask for a college recommendation? When should we begin asking teachers for letters of recommendation? So you probably want to ask teachers that you feel know you well. And you could ask a teacher now. You could let them know that you're going to be asking them in the fall, and they'll probably tell you when they want you to remind them. But think about teachers who know you well, or maybe who have taught you in subjects that you are interested in majoring in. And keep in mind too that a lot of sophomore and junior year teachers get asked. So it is nice to ask them in a very polite way and thank them if they say yes and stick to their deadlines. So that's a great question, but you could certainly let them know now that you're going to be asking them in the fall so that they can have you on their radar. Will AP testing count towards my entire college credits or only for the subjects I'm taking the AP test on? That's a good question. There's a lot of confusion about AP exam scores. So you really don't want to send AP exam scores until you know which college you're going to, and just send them to that one college. They're a little bit expensive to send, and colleges will report all of your scores ahead of time. And then just send that official score to the one college that you're going to, and every college will use that score a little bit differently. Some colleges consider a 3, 4, 5 on the exam passing. Some colleges only consider a 4 and a 5 passing. And some colleges will let you waive out of, say, a beginning English class if you took AP English language. But other colleges might say, okay, great, we're going to give you 3 units of humanities or something like that. So every college is going to deal with those scores a little bit differently. Deadlines for financial aid is usually March 2nd is the deadline for the FAFSA, but you want to apply before that because the money can be on a first come, first serve basis. And let's see, I answered the AP exam question already. This is a question that comes up a lot. Does having a decided major affect your chances of admission for the UCs? So the UCs say that it does not. They say that you can go in undeclared and that will not affect an admissions decision. I want you to keep in mind for the UCs, on their application, they'll ask you sometimes for like a second choice major. And you probably want to pick one if you can, because if your first major is a little more challenging to get into because it's a popular one, they may go to your second major to admit you. But they want you to put the major that you actually intend to have, even if it's a little more challenging to get into, and then give them that second choice. So they say that it doesn't, but as we know, some of the majors can be a little more competitive. Okay, our career pathway classes and completion of a career pathway recognized in college admissions. You can certainly write about being in a career pathway on a college application, and you can let colleges know that you will get recognition because you're going to complete your pathway. And then you will have a notation on your transcript saying that you completed that pathway. Do UCs consider my overall weighted GPA for decisions in addition to their 8-semester weighted GPA calculation? So this is a great question. We talked about how they cap the number of weighted grade points at 8 semesters. So that's like 4 weighted classes. And that's for eligibility. So that's 10th and 11th grade weighted courses. And then that's not to say that UCs don't look at all the classes that you took. So we know that many students who go to UCs took more than 4 weighted courses, but they have capped that for their eligibility to kind of level the playing field for other local schools nearby that maybe don't have as many AP classes as we do. So they will look at everything you took, but for eligibility, they're going to use that 8-semester cap. Okay, each college needs separate recommendations, or the same ones can be used. The same ones can be used, like for example, on Common App, you're going to have you're going to invite your teachers onto your Common App, and they're going to upload your letter there, and that's going to go to all the schools you are applying to. And yes, the slides will be shared, and this presentation is being recorded. For Zello, how do I get back into my Zello? What you want to do is you're going to go to your Clever account through the district. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of your Clever, there's a little Zello tile there, and you're going to click on that, and that will get you back into your Zello. And if you want to come to the Career Center at either of the schools, we can help you with that as well. What does legacy mean? So legacy means that you have a parent or another family member who went to a particular university. Some private schools look at if you're a legacy student. Many of them are moving away from that. So the question goes on to ask, if my parent went to a particular university, should I mention it, and will it help my chances? That is an excellent question. I would, sometimes it does help. I would recommend calling the university. You can call admissions offices. You don't have to identify yourself. You can ask a general question. I would recommend calling the college admissions office and saying, do you consider legacy in your application? Is it helpful to me if I have a parent or a guardian who went to your college? That's what I would recommend on that one. Okay, if my grades slipped a semester in a year because of a particular reason, but the other 3 years of high school show good grades and improvement, how would I indicate to the college the reason for the slip of grades that semester? That is a great question, and they do want you to explain that. On an application like a UC or a private school application, you will have a place on the UC application where after you enter your courses, it says additional comments, and you will put that in there. It can be short, it can just be a few sentences. Remember, the UC application wants you to be very concise and factual. So you would say, my grade slipped because whatever the reason is, and I'm happy to have gotten back on track right after that. And that's it. Some applications will not have a place for you to explain that, like a Cal State application does not have a place for you to explain that. But if you did have a slip and then grades came back up, that is usually okay. they will understand that something must have been going on for you. All right. And I think, any more questions?
That's it.
We've got about 6 more minutes.
That's about it. Winter, you covered pretty much everything.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for sticking with us. I know that was a long presentation. It's recorded. We'll release it. We'll release the slides so you can get those links that are on the slides. And then we'll compile some of the other questions maybe that we didn't get to tonight, and we'll release the answers to those questions as well. So thank you, everyone.